All right. Welcome to the Discovering Bigfoot podcast, everybody. Today on the show, we have a special guest. Her name is Lenita Bryant, and welcome to the Discovering Bigfoot podcast. So, for everybody listening, tell us about yourself. Where'd you come from? What are you doing here? And what do you got going on?
Well, Kyle, I've been going out to the farm where I've seen my Bigfoot since 1994, and talking to my Bigfoot and taking them things and watching them move through the woods and looking at their little children. And then they come to my house, and I also captured them on my satellite, one of them in a neighbor's yard. So I mean, I have all kinds of proof. I have footprints that are in the ditch at my house. There's all kinds of footprints at the yard, in the yard and at the farm, and it's just that's what I've been doing.
So tell me about your first encounter in '94.
Okay, in 1994, I had just gotten a divorce, and I bought the log house. Well, I didn't buy it; I rented it. It's got 75 acres of land, a log barn, and a lake, and it's in the middle of the woods, surrounded by the national forest. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be out from everyone. It was a log house. It was right up my alley. So I cleaned the log house up real good, and I moved in. And my mom had been coming over, spending the night with me a few nights, so I wouldn't be lonely until I got used to the cabin. And I was sitting in the living room one night. She was sitting facing me, and I was sitting where I could see out the windows. And I have a street light uh, that that's the only light I had for the outside, and it lit up my yard. So I could pretty well see outside. And I saw someone run across my yard and squat down behind my truck. Well, that really scared me because I was way out in the middle of the woods, and who would be running across my yard? So I had my dad's old shotgun, which wouldn't shoot. I didn't have any bullets. I grabbed it up and scared mother. I told her just it was okay. I was going outside. So I went outside. I ran to the back of the truck. There was no one there. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find anyone anywhere. And I was surrounded by dense, deep forest that no one would have come through to come to my house. And I have a gate across the driveway, so no one could drive up to my house, which was a long ways off the road. So I came back in. I told her, I said, whoever it was all dressed in black from head to toe, and that's all I could tell. I said they were like 6 feet or a little taller, and they were lanky. They weren't big, muscular. Someone just like a regular person, but tall. And that's the first time I saw them.
Wow, that's an awesome story. So before this encounter, well, how old were you at first? During
How am I right now?
Now, how old
I'm
were you when you had that encounter?
I was 38, I
Okay.
guess.
Okay, so you'd seen some things going on in life so far at that point. So has Bigfoot been at that point something you've done any research on or heard about? Was it ever a thing in your life that you had any experience
Never,
with? Nothing.
never. I I saw the Patty film and knew about Bigfoot, but that's all I knew. I hadn't researched it. I didn't go into ever trying to find anything out about Bigfoot or going anywhere to see Bigfoot. I didn't know hardly anything about Bigfoot. All I know was there was a bipedal humanoid that lived in the woods, and that's all that I knew. And when I lived in the log cabin, I had no reception. I didn't have a TV. I had a TV, but all you could do is watch movies on it. I didn't have a telephone even. And my neighbor, I met him one day, and he told me that I needed a dog. I didn't need to be up there by myself. I told him I wasn't afraid, but he got me a dog, a golden retriever, and I named it Cody. And he said that'll help watch after you and take care of you. And it was 9 weeks old when I got it, and I lived there with the little dog. And I would walk down to the lake every day to fish, and I loved to fish. And I could hear movement all through the woods. And when I would walk to the lake, I could hear something walking along beside me. So I I got an eerie feeling about that. And when I get down to the lake, the hair would stand up on the back of my neck and on my arms. Well, I met this guy came, I bought a refrigerator and the guy came to deliver it. And we started dating. And he told me, he said, every time I come down to this lake, I have a feeling that something is watching me. And he couldn't be comfortable and he'd look all around and he wouldn't see anything. And so I said, I think we have Bigfoot here. Well, he came over one night and he told me, he said, can I sleep out on your porch on this little bed until morning time? I can get up and go to work. He said, I won't have to drive home. It will save me a lot of time. I said, sure. So he went to sleep out on the little bed and I went to bed and I left the door open. And I heard Bigfoot coming down the side of the mountain. It was two of them. They were talking to each other, their little chatter. And then when they got close to the house, they started making animal noises. And it sounded like a goat to me. I thought, there's no goats talking to each other coming down the side of the mountain. I thought, oh no, I know what that is. That's those Bigfoot coming down the side of the mountain. So I slipped out on the porch and I put my hand over his mouth and I said, listen. And he started listening and his eyes got really big. It scared him terribly. He jumped up, ran in the kitchen, and I went in the kitchen. I said, what is it? He said, what in the, what is that noise? He said, what is that outside? I said, that was just my two of my Bigfoot. I said, they probably have been hunting and it's going on 3 a.m. So they're probably getting back from hunting and they're coming home. And they were just hollering back and forth to each other. And he said, Bigfoot, what is a Bigfoot? Well, then I really didn't know much about Bigfoot enough to tell him. And I told him what I knew, that it was a big, tall, hairy person. They lived in the woods. He said, where do they live? And I said, I believe they're living in my barn. And I told him, I said, I don't know very much about them. That's about all I know. Well, he left that night. I didn't think I would ever see him again. He was so afraid, but he came back and he wanted to know more about the Bigfoot. I said, well, let's sit out on the porch and listen, because at night you can really hear them. And at night they would talk to each other. They would break limbs. It sounded like they were stepping on limbs and breaking the limbs and hitting on a tree with a stick and making a lot of noises. And then I would hear, it sounded like coyotes going through the woods. But now that I think about it, it probably wasn't coyotes at all. It was probably them doing the growling and the howling. And I just thought it was coyotes. And my dog would get real upset and he'd stand at the edge of the yard and bark and growl. But I didn't see them very much when I lived there. So our water line broke and we had to move away. So I bought a house in Oxford, Alabama, and we moved down here, which was like 9 miles away. And I missed it so bad, I wanted to keep going back to see my Bigfoot. So kept going back, and I started taking them food. And I'd knock on the tree and holler like some idiot. And I thought, that's what you do, because I saw the guys on the TV doing that. So I would do it too. Well, they would not come up at all. I would get nothing. So then I got to thinking, well, if these are really people, maybe I shouldn't act like this and I should just talk. So I started saying, when I'd come up, I'd say, hello, how are you? I've come to see you, to see how you're doing. And I brought you some food to eat. And I brought some food for the children. And I would pop a big, huge bag of popcorn, big sack. And I would bring them some meat to eat and a few other little things. And they love apples. They don't care anything about carrots. But mine don't anyway. So I'd go back every week, or sometimes more often than that, and carry them food. And they got used to me. And so I started taking pictures. Well, one day I have a friend named Faye, and I wanted her to go with me so I would have proof there was really Bigfoot up there. She decided she'd go, and I told her, I said, whatever happens, I said, don't run here. I said, because there's a panther up here. It's a black panther. And I've named her Blackie. And I said, I've walked all around her. She's never bothered me, never run at me, nothing. She usually hides when she sees me coming. And I said, she said, well, what about the Bigfoot? I said, you don't run from them. And I said, if you feel scared, you call me and I will come to you. So I took her up there. Now, she has had a stroke and she has some mental issues, and she hasn't got everything back the way she used to be yet. So we walked up there, and she was standing in the road, and I walked away from her, and she started yelling. I turned around. I said, Faye, what's wrong? And she can't talk plain. And she said, well, Nita, there are 4 Bigfoots, and they are black, and they're standing here looking at me. And she said, I'm going. I said, no, you stand still and I will come to you. So she stood still, and I come to where she was, and I said, you have your phone? She said, yes. I said, take a picture of them. She said, all right. So she took a picture of them, and she took some more pictures, and I took some pictures. And we went home and we discussed it, and she sent me some pictures. She said, this is what was looking at me. And when she sent me the picture, I could hardly believe it. There were Bigfoot on the picture. It was a man and a woman, and another woman holding a baby. And it was holding the baby around its neck. And the little baby had black fur on it, black hair. It had a long, skinny arm hanging down. And there was a little tiny man sitting down below where they are. And there was an animal that I've never seen before. I've never seen anything like it. And where it was shaped kind of like a big female lion, and it had spots on it. And where its mouth was another face. Instead of a mouth being there, there were 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Like this face was coming out where the creature's mouth was supposed to be. And they were crouched down behind that, hiding. And the little man, which now I know is a little person, was sitting down in front of it on the ground. And I think they're called the moon-eyed people. And the little man had black around his eyes, black circles around his eyes. And I also got a picture. It was about 200 feet away. It was in one of the pictures she took. And it was a female Bigfoot with hair on her face. And she had black hair, and she had it pulled back, and it was kind of rolled up like a French twist. And she was holding a small child in her arm right up beside a tree. And this child had blonde hair, and it had a little narrow streak of hair, real short hair, running down its forehead and covering over its nose. And I was just astounded. That was a little girl Bigfoot. And then I started seeing children all through the woods in some of the pictures. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're just like us. They have families. So then I started carrying them things, and then I started taking them toys. And they loved the toys, I know, because I'd find them scattered all through the woods where they had been playing with the toys. One day I went to take them some toys, and I fell down trying to climb this little hill. I fell down in the ditch, and I could not get up. The ground kept falling away up from underneath me. So it took me a while to get up, and I asked them, I said, please come and help me. I can't get up. I know you're there. No one come to help me. And I started crying. But finally I got up. I took the toys. I got upset. I took the toys. I threw them up into the woods a little ways. And I took their food, and I threw that too. And I said, here's your food. Here are the children's toys. If you want them, come and get them. I'm going home. Well, I went home, and then I got to thinking about what I'd done. I said, I've got to go back. So about 2 days later, I went back, and I noticed something on the line where the power line runs. It's real wide, about 12, 15 feet wide, and the big power lines run up the side of the hill. And I noticed there was a trail there, and it was close to where I had fallen. And the grass was grown up over waist high. And this trail, all the grass, everything was flattened down, completely flat on the ground. And the trail went 3/4 up the side of the hill, and then it turned into the woods. And I thought, oh, I said, I wonder how this happened. I could go up there and carry the food now. So I went up the trail. When I got to the top of the trail, I saw 3 logs about this big around, broken off at each end. And that's what apparently they had used, and they'd rolled it down the side of the hill, and they had flattened every one of the weeds and the sagebrush that was growing up, and they made me a trail. And I got to thinking, I said, oh, I know you made this trail to keep me from falling again. Thank you so much. And I carried the food and put the food out for them. And from then on, I never fell again, and I never had a problem. And there's a black panther that lives up there. And when I take a picture of the panther, some of the Bigfoot are always really close to it, and some within a foot of it. So I was thinking maybe that was their pet. There was a panther that lived there when I lived there. And it has died since 1994. They don't live that long. It probably had babies, and that was probably one of its babies that stayed there and lives there. And they probably raised it from a baby, so it's probably one of their pets.
That's a lot going on. Have you shared these photos with anybody?
I don't know. I wanted to put them on my channel, but I haven't been able to figure out how. And I that's the reason I sent those photos to you. Gotcha. And also some orbs. I've taken pictures of orbs that are up at the farm, and I had some orbs here in the backyard that I put on my channel.
Those orbs are amazing. Those are some of the best pictures of orbs I've ever seen. But what I will do is try to get them up here and also up on the podcast Instagram. But I want to talk about those pictures because I've had a good look at them, and I've studied them as best as I can. Can you tell me more about what's going on in the pictures?
Okay, which one you want to know about?
Well, start with any of them. It seems like there's some sort of cloaking going on in these pictures.
Yes.
There's definitely. So for anybody who
okay.
anybody's gonna look at these pictures when I post them up, there's one where it's really clear, and then off to the side there's like a really kind of like unfocused area in the picture, and you can see a face and you can see some stuff going on, but it's really hard to make out. So can you tell us a little bit more on what you think's going on with those pictures?
Okay, some of them are screenshots that I took out of my video, and one of the screenshots, there's a big round circle, and it's encircling the road that you walk on to go up to the log house, and all on the bottom of the ground, all around in a circle through the trees, around on each side. It's like a big circle that you walk through to go to the house. And I've got to looking at it, and inside that circle, you can see Bigfoot. And you can see Bigfoot in the trees, in the grass. They're hiding all around. Some are cloaked, and that cloaking is what caused the blurriness. That it looks like a portal, but it's not a portal because I saw no difference when I walked through it. It's just the Bigfoot cloaking. They make it really blurry. And then Faye took a picture which she sent to me. She said, "Explain this to me." And I looked at the picture, and there's a piece of farm equipment, and there's some Bigfoot hiding behind it. And one of the Bigfoot is a beautiful, and I mean beautiful, exotic looking woman. She has black hair and black eyebrows and long black eyelashes. and she has her fingers stuck through some of the holes in the farm equipment. You can see her fingernails, and you can see her nostrils and her nose. But the kicker is you can also see right through her. You can see the ground behind her, the grass, everything. You can see her, but at the same time you can see through her. And then there's another Bigfoot right beside her that's more cloak. It's more fuzzy looking, and her fingernails are all chewed up looking, and she's just not attractive at all, and just doesn't look at all like the exotic woman that I have the picture of, but they're side by side. And then I went to feed the Bigfoot one day, and Faye was taking pictures of me, and she sent me the pictures, and I have semi-transparent heads and the tops of Bigfoot completely surrounding me, almost touching my body. And then there's another Bigfoot, and it's a Bigfoot woman, and she has real bushy black hair, and it's standing out like that. And she is right in front of me, leaning down, waiting to grab a piece of ham. I had cooked a ham and carried them a ham to eat, and she could not wait to grab that ham. And you could see all kinds of faces, all kinds of Bigfoot. Some have round heads like us. Some of them look like us so much you would never know they were a Bigfoot unless you saw their bodies and all the hair on them. Never. They don't have hair on their face. And then I see little children, smiling children with big smiles on their face, and they have a little bit of hair right here on their cheeks. And they have, one of them has a real wide nose, and she has hair on her nose. And almost all of them, not all of them, but I'll say 80% of them have a little strip of hair that runs down their face. And that helps to conceal them when they are in the woods. And it's kind of like camouflage. You put on your face, you have different colors. Well, their skin looks like ours, but a lot of times when the shadows, their skin has a green cast to it. And that's one reason you can't see them very well when they're in the woods. They can stand and lean against a tree, and you'll never know they're there. And it depends on which way the sun's shining. I noticed there's a hill behind the barn where I film, and when the sun is setting over that hill, then the shadow is on the trees facing me, and they'll get in front of the trees in the shadow instead of hiding behind the trees. I've noticed that they do that. They use everything to their advantage. And there was one little girl, I walked past her and never saw her, and I looked back and took a picture, and she has her head leaned out around the tree with a big smile on her face, looking at me. And I guess they're just as curious about me as I am of them. But I wanted to tell you something before I forget. There's one that always comes to my house, and I have a drainage ditch in the backyard with a real large pipe in it. And I got to looking down the pipe, and I saw a huge Bigfoot face at the end of the pipe, and it looked green. And I couldn't figure out how he could be down there since he's so big, and his face just took up just about the whole opening of the pipe. And he had long black eyelashes and black hair, and he was looking at me. I took a little film of him, and I took some screenshots out of it, and I named him Tom. And he's the one that I saw on the satellite picture a few houses up from me. But he comes a lot, and he knocks on the trees, and I talk to them, and I'll say something. They don't always answer me, but when they want to, they do. And they look after my cats. I've got a mother cat and 2 kittens that are about grown. And if one of them starts sneaking off out into the weeds, you'll hear a real loud knock if I'm on the back porch. And I'll know one of my little kittens has slipped off, and I get up and I go look for it. But they always let me know what's going on around me by knocking to me.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more on how, so in the pictures that you send me, like I said, they're kind of blurry, and it's hard to kind of figure out what's going on in them. So do you see them like full figure, like I would before you take the picture, or is it all just kind of, you don't really know what's going on around you till you take the picture?
Well, when I took the movie of Tom in and the pipe. I couldn't squat down that day. I have trouble with my back. Sometimes I can't bend over very well. So I took my phone and I put it down in the opening of the pipe and I filmed because I couldn't get down there and look at him. And so when I come back in, I looked and I saw him. He was there. Excuse me. He was there at the end of the pipe. And I filmed him and he let me film him. He kept looking up like, is there someone out in the yard that's going to see me? Well, one day I decided I'm going to the other end of this pipe. It's a 50-foot long pipe to see what's at the other end of the pipe. And the neighbor that lives catty cornered behind me, he wasn't at home. So I went around the backyard to see about the end of the pipe. And it comes out into this really big area. And the area is about 5 or 6 feet deep. It's like 7 feet wide. The whole bottom is cement, and it has cinder blocks on each side of it. And it's like a big ditch, but it's fixed really nice with the blocks, and it's very clean. And I said, no wonder they can get at the end of this pipe. It's a big area for them to get in and lay down, and no one would ever see them laying down in here. And they can look up the pipe at me. But there's more than just Bigfoot here. And that's the little people. And it almost run me crazy at first. It scared me so bad. When I first saw the little people, I started to hear them. They started tapping to me. It's like, whoop, sorry. They started tapping to me like that. And can you still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. They started tapping to me, and I wondered what was tapping. So I started taking pictures, and then I started taking videos, and I would see little people. Well, I went out there at night. I thought I'm going out here at night to see what I can see. So I took a video and some pictures, and I come back in, and I started seeing these little faces. And there was one little man with brown hair, and you can see his thumb. And you know how your thumb kind of bends like that? You could see his thumb in the shadows bent. You could see his face. There were others behind him where the light was shining from behind them and lit their hair up. And there's one little boy that used to come and tap, and he's about 2 foot tall. And he did a lot of tapping. He looks just like a little boy, except he has hair on his nose, a little bit of hair on his face. And one of my friends saw that picture and thought that it was her grandson. I said, no. I said, that's one of the little Bigfoot that's in my backyard. She said, you've got to be kidding, Lanita. Is that really a Bigfoot? I said, it certainly is. And all this is just so hard to believe. And the one little woman, I've got a picture of her head. There is a ivy leaf over the top of her head, and her head is smaller than the ivy leaf.
Have you you've gone on other podcasts and talked about this stuff too, correct?
I have. I sure have.
Bigfoot Odyssey, you said?
Yes, I've been on there twice.
Gotcha. So what was his opinion on that stuff? Because I'm not really too good when it comes to I don't know enough really when it comes to the little people and the orbs and stuff like that. What did he have to say about that?
Okay, I talked to Carrie about it. Most of the talking that Carrie and I did, we emailed each other. When I was on the show, he had someone called him and he had to leave. So I talked to Danielle, and then I was on Bigfoot Odyssey where Larry was drawing Bigfoot, and he drew a picture of one of my Bigfoot. But Carrie and I would talk, and I would send him pictures. And I took a little baby monkey that had hair on its body, and it was dressed in clothes like a little baby would be. And Faye took a picture of me holding the little doll. And I sent that to Carrie, and I said, look, I took this little doll, this little monkey doll, for my Bigfoot to see the children, to see if they liked it. And it wasn't but a few, it was not even a minute. And the picture came back to me. And I thought, why is he sending this picture back? And I started to look at the picture closer. And he had circled a little Bigfoot girl with blonde hair right behind me and looking at that doll, just staring at it. And I said, how did you ever see her in that picture? I never even noticed her. He said he's gotten used to looking at pictures of Bigfoot in his travels, when he went to Florida all the time. And he said they were easy for him to spot. And I said, so you're certain this is a Bigfoot? I knew that it was, but I wanted to see what he said. He said, yes, he was certain it was a Bigfoot. He said, and he dared anyone to challenge what he'd said.
Yeah. No, a lot of people are still having trouble grasping the concept that they can and probably do cloak. And when you're that spiritual of a being, in a reality, it's pretty much just from my research and from what I understand, when you can control your vibration, you can control like your atomic structure, which enables you to pretty much become see-through or cloak or whatever you want to call it. So we're on the cusp of that, really. We're already past mind speak, we're already past telepathy, we're already past all that stuff, and that's all proven. The CIA has been using that for decades. So the next step would be invisibility and cloaking, and like I haven't had any encounters like that, and I'm not gonna knock you for having them. I'm not gonna say you're lying. I'm not gonna doubt you, and you have the photo evidence to prove it. So I hope that I can actually see that one day and be like, yeah, I've seen it, and I can vouch for it that way.
I invite you to come up here anytime you want to come, and I'll take you over there. It's private property, and I have permission to go, but I would take you over there. And I used to worry about, how I know it's an electromagnetic field that helps them to do things, but instead of thinking about how are you cloaking and how are you able to do this and that, and what are all the orbs, and are you traveling in the orbs? Now, when I think about them, I think about, what do you think when you wake up in the mornings? Do you look at your children and smile and make sure they're happy? And do you worry about your little children, and are your lives kind of like my life and leading an everyday life? And one day when I was up there were round places right in the road. There were these round areas for about 50 or 60 feet up the road, and there were pine straw. Some of them were small, some of them were very, very large, and I saw at least 75 of those round, and it looked like they had bedded down. It was hot summer, bedded down in the road over the night together, all of them safe there together. And it curved around and it went up into this little area, open area, into the woods where Todd and I had gone and set up there. But they stay together. And I've got pictures of Bigfoot that have cone heads and regular heads. They all look so different. That's what really threw me, was how come some of them look like the Bigfoot, kind of like Todd has, and then some of them looks like me, except they have more hair.
Mm-hmm. What? So Todd came out there, obviously. How long did he stay with you?
He spent a week.
Okay, so tell us about it. What went on? What transpired? What did you learn about Todd? What do you think of him? I'm sure you've seen his footage. Tell us about everything.
Well, I talked to Todd, and he said, so you really have Bigfoot? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I'm coming to Alabama, and I'd like to come and see your Bigfoot. So I told him to come right on, and he said he'll be here for a week. I said, that's great. So I took off work for a week, and so I could stay with Todd, and we could go out and look around. And I found out, I was sitting on my back porch, and I got a phone call, and it said, this is Todd. I pulled up in the yard, And I said, well, come around the house to the back porch. I'm back here. So he came around the house and he came up the steps. And I said, Todd's standing. And he put his hand out to shake hands with me. I said, where is your beard? No beard. I was so used to seeing him with a beard, and he didn't have a beard. And that was the first thing. And then we talked, and he talked about and told me things that were going on, private things that were going on in his life and about his children. Of course, you can talk about it now. And he was trying to get his children and working hard for that. And he was doing all these videos, traveling around, trying to see different Bigfoot. And he asked me all about my Bigfoot, and he filmed me, and I told him what happened. And we went out to the farm. I took him out to the farm to see my Bigfoot. And he said, do everything that you usually do. And I told him I didn't worry, I would. So we go up to the gifting area. Oh, and they break limbs. I haven't told you about all that stuff. Where they were staying, they've got a bunch of small trees that they've been over in an arch and stuck down in the ground. If they didn't stick them in the ground, they would take them and wedge them with something. And that's where they stayed at the front of the farm. But I took him to the back of the farm, to the big field where I saw the alpha male. And the alpha male is huge. He's like 8 feet. He has no neck. He has human eyes. He does not have animal eyes. All of them have human eyes. I saw one that had more animal looking eyes, but the rest have human eyes just like us. And you can see the intelligence in those eyes. And he had a real wide nose. It looks kind of like a cat's nose with real, really short, fine hair on his nose. And he had long black hair, except it come around an area like this and come around his mouth. And his skin in this area under his eyes, and one of you could see of his cheeks and his forehead, it was gray. And that's the only time I think I ever got scared, is when I saw him. He was sitting on a log across the field. He was really big. So I told Todd, I said, the alpha male usually sits over there on a log. And I said, he has Bigfoot that stand and or sit around in the tree line on the other side of this field. So we had brought some food, and Todd told me to put it out, and I did. And he got one of the bananas that I had brought. He peeled the banana, and he took a bite out of it, and he held it up in the air, and he said, look what I have, big boy. He said, I have your banana, and I'm eating it. What are you going to do about it? And I thought, oh, no. He's going to make my Bigfoot mad, and he never will come out. But I didn't say anything to Todd, because Todd knows what he's doing. So I said, Todd, why are you doing that? He said, I'm trying to get a rile out of him to see if I can get him to come out. I said, well, I don't want him riled up. He's too big. But he never came out. And so after Todd did that, you could hear them kind of backing away from Todd, backing back up to the woods. Todd said, you hear that? I said, what, them backing up? I said, yes, I hear them backing up. And they backed up completely from us, went in a big circle around behind us, and went around to the other side in front of us, and went on the other side of the lake and stood on the other side of the lake until we left. So they could still see what we were doing, but they had a lake between them and us. Mm-hmm. But Todd found a footprint. I think it was like 13, 14 inches long, and he said it was a female footprint, because it wasn't as wide as the male's or as long as the male's, but it looked like a female footprint. And in one of the bags we had taken food in, there was a hair where they had stuck their arm down in the bag, and one of their hairs was down in the bag. So he had that he took with him. And we mainly sat up there and talked, and I played my harmonica. I have a harmonica. And I had left that harmonica, and I didn't realize I left it. I left it on a log. And when I went back the next time to carry them food, there lay my harmonica right by where I always put the food. They had found the food. They had found the harmonica and brought it to the area where I feed them. and it had a dent in the harmonica, like they had taken it in their mouth or had tried to play it and had bitten it. So they were interested in the harmonica.
That's awesome. So what did you think of Todd? And did you have any other encounters after that?
Oh, Todd and I didn't have any other encounters, but he went to the national forest and he saw a lot of tree breaks and a lot of evidence, and some of the pictures that we took together, where we were and behind us were three Bigfoot, Father Bigfoot, mother, and his daughter. And I've got the pictures of them, and he wasn't even aware that I filmed those. They were at the campgrounds. They have closed those campgrounds down at night and only open in the daytime. And I asked them, why are these campgrounds closed down at night? They said, in case of flash flood. I said, there's probably been 2 to 3 flash floods here in the past 100 years. And I said, I think you closed the campground at night for other reasons. And he wouldn't say anything to me. And that was one of the forest rangers that told me that. But I'm sure it was because there's so many Bigfoot up there.
It's quite possible.
But he went on some more hikes and went out through the national forest, and he went back to the cabin again. But he never did get to see one. But I have a friend, and her name is Anita, and together we're the Sasquatch sisters, Southern Sasquatch sisters. And she got out of the car, and they saw her with me. And they haven't seen me in a long time. And they started knocking on trees, and they started whooping. And she looked at me. She said, Lanita, I know you said you had Bigfoot up here, but I never dreamed that I would actually get to see one or hear one. And she said, I just got out of the car, and I'm already hearing knocks and hearing them whoop. And went a little further, and they started whistling. She said, did you hear that? That was a whistle. So we went to these logs, and we sit down. We were going to have a little picnic, and I was going to leave them food. And we had been sitting there, and we ate our food, and I got up and put their food out and walked back to her. And when I walked back to her, they hit us with infrasound. That's the only time I've ever been hit with infrasound. And my back was turned away. I was turned away from her, not looking at her. And all of a sudden, my ears started ringing. They stopped up. I couldn't hear. It's like when you're on an airplane, you start descending pretty fast. And, if you don't pop your ears, they get stopped up. That's what it was like. And I was kind of dizzy, and I got a little nauseous. And I turned around and looked at her. And when I looked at her, she was holding her nose and trying to blow and open her ears. And I started laughing. And she said, do you feel kind of funny? I said, yeah. I said, are your ears ringing and are they stopped up? She said, yes. I said, you've been hit with infrasound. I said, I'm so sorry. They usually don't do this. And I said, they have a reason. I said, maybe there's a baby that's very close to us and they were concerned about, or I don't know why they did it, but they didn't do it very much, just a little. And we walked back down to the car, and she said, I don't know whether to get in the car or turn around and walk up into the woods. And I looked at her. I said, what? And she said, I feel confused, Lanita. I said, that's the infrasound. I said, come and get in the car. We're leaving. And we did.
So you've never tried to approach the sounds?
No. When they knock, I just sit and listen to them.
Fair enough. I always try to. It's like a thing for me. If I hear sounds, I'm going over there. It's just I have to. Because I don't know, call it crazy, but I have to. But I actually had a really crazy thing happen to me that I haven't talked about. So you're gonna be the first person to hear about this.
Oh, great.
So I was in Radium with Todd September. So we leave apples as gifts. We have a certain gifting hill that we go to, and we always go there. We always leave apples, and we always clean up after ourselves. We'll check them, like every day. If we leave apples up, I go back the next day or the day after, and I look to see if there's apples gone, if there's apples missing, if the apples are eaten, if they are part eaten by the app or not by the apples by squirrels or birds. Um, I go up there and I take them down because I want them to have fresh apples for gifts. Um, so we're very mindful of the footprint that we leave, and we always try to clean up as much as we can. Like I'll pick up apple, pieces off the ground because I don't want someone to come behind me and see that apples are gone and be like, oh well, there's a piece, so it wasn't Sasquatch, it was birds or it was squirrels or whatever. So we had an experience one night where there was two of them that came from a certain area, and I didn't go over there because it was dark out. So the next day I decided to go over there because I wanted to see if I could find tracks or something. And that there was a very specific direction. It wasn't the Gifting Hill because the Gifting Hill is off to, if you're looking, I think south or almost south. The Gifting Hill is almost due east. But it was more southeast. It wasn't in that area. So I walked over there, and there's a porcupine trail that runs right there. And I walked across the porcupine trail because I knew it was on the other side. I just had this weird, like, I know exactly where they were. I just had that feeling. So there's a tiny little bump of a hill, and it's just on the other side, like further down the porcupine trail, than the Gifting Hill. So I instantly was like, that's got to be it. That's where they were. And I see footprints going in the moss, and it's like it's got to be that perfect place. So I start walking through the trail, and I look up. There's something weird, like right at the top of the hill. And you can ask Todd, you can ask Ashley. They were both there. What is that? That's weird. Like I've never. It's not bark off of a tree. It's definitely like a shiny material. So I walk up there, and there's an apple bag in perfect condition, laying open on top of the little hill there. Now, from that spot where I found the apple bag to the Gifting Hill is about 200 to 250 yards. There wasn't any wind. There wasn't really even any breeze in the past 2 weeks that I was there. Uh, there was no marks. There was one mark on the bag, but it wasn't torn. It wasn't ripped. It wasn't folded. There wasn't any like wrinkles in it. It was like perfect. So no animal would have picked it up and carried it with it because it would have gotten shredded. If it was stuck in the antler of a deer or if a raccoon wanted to get in it, it was just perfect. And I couldn't figure out why it was there. No idea. I look over and there's a tree break 15 yards away, right over the trail. It's like, whoa, okay. So to me, it was placed there for me to find, which is absolutely crazy. And another thing too is if we did leave that out there, right? There's like one little mark on it that I noticed, but there's no way for that apple bag to have made it there without it being torn up or shredded, or there's no reason. Nobody dropped it. It wasn't folded up or crunched up like that had, in a ball that had just fallen out of somebody's pocket. Like nobody goes really over that area. We always pick up our stuff. We never bring apple bags out there. We always just kind of put them in our pockets. So there's absolutely no reason for that apple bag to be there. Where did it come from? How is it in such perfect condition? Why was I the one to find it? So there's so many questions involved, and that apple bag is still in the camper up there. And actually, the rock that got thrown at me, I found, and that's still at the camper up there too. But yeah, no, that was a pretty weird encounter. So when it comes to talking about like cloaking and like portals and stuff like that, I gotta say that there has to be some legitimacy to it because that encounter alone with me was enough to be like, okay, there's no way that this was grabbed by something or an animal and just carried off and left here. Like I was guided to this spot. I was supposed to find this, and I found it, and there's no reason it should be there. So why is it here? And even if we threw it out in the garbage, it would have been covered with other food and stuff. It was clean. So they would have had to go in the camper and like take it out of the garbage. It wasn't stretched like nothing. I don't understand. Don't understand.
Well, let me ask you, think to yourself now, if you found the bag like that and they had eaten the apples, what does the apple bag laying there tell you?
They want more apples.
Right.
So
They want more apples.
that's exactly what I did. I went back to that spot. I put 5 or 6 apples up in a tree that I found. I decided was going to be a new gifting tree, and they never took them. They
They
were
didn't
still there
take,
when I left.
but I bet they took them after you left.
Probably.
They they just didn't want you to know they took them.
Very
They're,
possible.
I don't know their logic. They think differently. When I started carrying them food, they didn't want me to come up to the barn because all the children and everything were there all the time. That means they had to gather the children back, keep them back away from me. And children are hard to contain, especially when they're little toddlers. They'd cry out. I've heard them cry out. And I've got a film of them crying out when I took them that doll. They were like, oh, oh. So I know the mother was probably holding the child. But they had taken a blue Walmart plastic bag and they tied it. I have a picture of it. They tied it in a tree about 25 feet up in the air. So I saw that bag and I realized it was tied on both sides to the tree. And so I knew they had to have done that. I said, now what would you put that bag up there for? I know why you put it there because I bring your food in a bag, usually a Walmart bag, and it's tied in that tree. You've tied it up there because you want me to leave your food in that bag. I said, do you see how short I am? How do you think I'm going to climb up that tree and put that food in that bag? I said, someone will see that bag. I said, you need to get that bag down from there because someone will see that and they'll know something's going on. And so it stayed up there for about a week or two, and then it was taken down. And they do crazy little things.
Yeah.
They
So I've
they
heard.
put they pushed a tree down across the road because they didn't want me to come all the way to the barn. That's after I had moved away, and the tree had broken up. It was rotten, so they pulled a bunch of limbs off of other trees with green leaves and they spread it out all along that tree all the way across the road. And I got to picking up the little leaves and they tried to make it look more solid, I guess would be the word, because the tree had broken when it fell. And I felt they were saying, do not cross over this tree. Don't go any further, Lanita. Leave the food right here. And I looked in the woods and I said, no, I'm not leaving the food here. If you want this food, then you'll have to take the food where I leave it. I stepped right over that tree and I started going. And the further I went, I felt like, oh my goodness, some animal is going to jump out and eat me up. And that's the feeling I had in my mind, but foreboding, just bad and scary. And I thought, why am I have lived here for 2.5 years. Why would I feel this way? And then I happened to think, oh my goodness, they're trying to make me feel that way so I won't come to the barn. So I just stopped and I looked up in the woods and I said, it's not working. I'm coming to the barn, whether you want me to or not, and I'm bringing this food. And I did, and they've never done that to me before. They've never barred my way. They've never gave me another feeling like that. And every time I leave food somewhere, they break a limb and it hangs straight up and down in the air right over the top of the food. Now they've done that back here in my yard. They did. If I change areas where I feed them at the farm, then they'll break another limb. They'll hang it hanging up and down, and then they break limbs off and make A's, the figure A in trees up there. I don't know what the symbol A means. I don't have a clue. And there's one limb that they've weaved through several trees that was there when I lived there. And how many years has it been? It was 1994, and they had weaved a big limb through several trees, and it's still there.
Wow.
It's rotten. It's been there for so long, but it's still there. They're just creatures of habit.
Yeah. I did an interview with a guy, Jim, from Tennessee, and his son. Now, I don't know if you saw that or not. He leaves them pictures that he like hand draws, and it's actually pretty cool. He'll find them just in different places, all over the place. He leaves him some other stuff too. They actually gave him a bottle of Maker's Mark alcohol, like whiskey. They gifted back to him. Yeah, it was
Oh,
really cool. It was really cool.
well,
And then another time he showed me a picture. He had drawn like himself or one of them, just a rough rendition of it, and then like the sun in the corner, right? Just the sun with the rays. He left it out
hmm
there. A couple days later, it comes back, and they had taken the corner of the page and folded it over where the sun was, and like disappeared the sun, but left the Bigfoot, which to me means it was nighttime. It's night.
nighttime.
Yeah. So that was really cool, and he left it like that. And he's got it in a binder. It's really cool. And I
Well,
haven't talked to him in a while. I
that's
hope he's doing good.
neat. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I didn't get to see that one, but they do think they leave me feathers, beautiful feathers. They leave me. I make wreaths and different arrangements. Can you see this arrangement?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I like it.
I made that. I'm always making things, and when I make a wreath, I take things from the woods and I put in my wreath, and I always put lichen off of the trees in my wreaths. And so they bring it to me and they lay it in the yard, and I go out and get it and bring it in the house. Well, one day when I was at the farm on the side of the road, I had been thinking, oh, I wished I had a wild turkey to cook. There's nothing like the taste of a wild turkey. And I looked in front of me, and there was something laying on the side of the road. And when I got up there, it was a wild turkey. It was dead. It was still warm, and it had a broken neck. And I thought, oh my goodness. I said, did you read my mind and leave me this turkey? And then I thought, I don't know whether it was a gift or not. I'm afraid to take it. So I walked up a little further, and then I saw Blackie, the panther. That's what I named the panther. And Blackie was just laying up under a bush, just panting and looking at me, watching to see what I was going to do. And I bent down and rubbed that turkey and picked it up. And the panther never acted like, oh, that's mine, get away from it. It didn't do anything. And so I'll never know whether it was my gift or whether the panther had killed it and was saving it for later.
That's really cool. Well, unfortunately, we're about out of time. So I want to thank you for coming on the show and hearing your stories and sharing your encounters and all that stuff. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the people who are having the encounters similar to what you're going through and what you're doing. So thank you for everybody
Well,
for you coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I'd like to say hello, and I thank everyone who subscribed to my channels and everyone that I've met in the Bigfoot field. And I have met plenty of people. I've met Cliff from Finding Bigfoot. I've just and met Ken Gerhard from he does all kinds of things other than just looking for Bigfoot. And I've got to meet you, and I'm so glad I got to meet you. And I want to thank you for this interview.
It's no problem. I want to thank you for your opinion about Todd and talking about him and stuff like that. Oh, actually, before we go, I want to ask your quick opinion on what you think of Todd's footage.
Oh, the good footage he has. I asked him. I'll tell you about that. I asked him. I said, Todd, everyone is saying that that's not real. He said, I know it, Lanita. And he said, but I have proved that it's real. And he said, we've looked at the pine needles and everything, and we've shown how much bigger that Jake's head is than mine. They're saying that that's my picture, that's my face. And he said, it is not. He said, it's real. And he said, you are never going to get people that everyone is going to believe you. It don't matter if you had Bigfoot right there standing with you and a movie was took of you. There are people that are not going to believe it. And I told him, and he told me about all his encounters and things that they did and things that I had learned that my Bigfoot did. And I thought he was great, and I believed in everything he told me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your opinion.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
All right. Well, please keep in touch, and I'll try to get some of your pictures up on the podcast Instagram and maybe even on the interview.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. Thanks again for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. Good night.